Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru.
Chakra chahan ar parna jaat, ar paat nehn jihi, रूप रंग अर रेख पेख को कह न सकत केहे अचल मूर्त अनपौ प्रकाश अमितोच कहजा कोट इंद्र इंद्राण साहा साहान गणजा त्रिपवन में हीप सुर नर असुर नेत नेत बन तरण कहत तव सर्व नाम कथ कवन कर्म नाम वर्णत समत त्रिपवन में हीप सुर नर असुर नेत नेत बन तरण कहत तव सर्व नाम कथ कवन कर्म नाम वर्णत समत। गुरु प्यारी साध संगत जी गज बज के फतेह प्रवान करो जी। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। So we're very blessed to be gathered in the sanctuary in the protection of Tan Tan Sadguru Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, along with Dasam Granth Maharaj and Sadguru Ji Maharaj. So today's theme is Hola Mahalla and also the New Year within the Sikh calendar. So with Guru Sahib's Kirpa, for about 30 to 40 minutes, we're going to go over the itihas of Hola Mahalla, what its link to Holi is, where it came from, and what purpose does it have, even within today's world. So just before we get into Hola Mahalla, it's very closely linked to Holi, and a lot of the times there's a misconception of people, especially Punjabi log, thinking that it's the same thing. Before we go into Hola, let us go into the Sakhi of Holi as it comes up within Gurbani itself. So there's always Sikhi to take from it, if Maharaj spoke about it as well. So if we cast our minds back to a very long time ago, cutting the story very short, there was a ruler called Harnakhash, and Harnakhash had done bhakti, had done bandagi, had done meditation, japt up for quite a long time. And due to this meditation, due to this bandagi that he'd done, he was given a vad, he was given a boon, he was given a gift from Vaheguru. And the gift he asked for was to be invincible, such that he could not be killed in a few ways. Those few ways were that he couldn't be killed by a man or an animal. He couldn't be killed neither indoors or outdoors. He couldn't be killed at night or within the day. And these things, became a culmination of something that made him practically invincible and untouchable within earth. So Harnakhash had these gifts, had these boons, and he realized that no one could step to him, no one could even touch him, and he was invincible amongst the people of the world. And due to this, he became hankari, he became egoistic, and he thought that he was invincible, and he forgot about the person, he forgot about where those powers had come from. And due to this fear that people had of him, because of the gifts he had, because of the boons he had, he started getting people to do puja of him, doing puja of Harnakhash instead of doing puja of Vaheguru. And the whole world out of fear started reciting the name of Harnakhash and forgot the path of Vaheguru. And some time later, there was a child born within the house of Harnakhash, and that child we know today as Bhagat Prehlaad Ji. And Bhagat Prehlaad Ji was quite the opposite, and something that Harnakhash wasn't expecting, in the sense that as soon as Bhagat Prehlaad Ji came out of their mother's womb, continuously they would be doing the job of Vaheguru. They would be connected to Vaheguru, and on their lips 24/7 would be the name of Vaheguru, of Gobind, of Ram. And this obviously created a bit of a problem. This created a bit of tension within the house of the ruler, as he had managed to get the whole world into his feet. He had managed to get the whole world in fear of him. And then comes along his son, who starts doing the opposite of what he's telling the whole Srishti, the whole world. And the essence that Bhagat Prehlaad Ji brought with him was spreading. So Bhagat Prehlaad Ji comes up many times, is mentioned many times within Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. And Guru Amar Das Ji in 1154 mentioned when they started to go to school. And Guru Amar Das Ji Maharaj says, Pita Prahlaad Parana Pathaya. So the Pita of Bhagat Prehlaad Ji, Harnakhash, or Parana Vaste Unanu Pejya, Parana Pathaya. He sent them to get some studies, he sent them to school to learn. And later on within the Shabad we find that in the olden days there were chalkboards and chalk. And the whole class would be told to write the name of Harnakhash upon their slates. But Bhagat Prehlaad Ji refused and they said, the only name that I'm going to put on my slate is the name of Gobind. And by doing so, it actually changed the minds, changed the lives of all the other students that were sitting in the classroom. And they also started to do the same. Now Harnakhash was obviously getting quite annoyed at this, as his own son was defaming him in front of his whole kingdom. So Harnakhash many times tried to warn Bhagat Prehlaad Ji, the son, and told them to do my puja, do the puja of your father. Waheguru isn't here now, I'm the ruler, you should be worshipping me. But Bhagat Prehlaad Ji kept faith within Waheguru as a true Bhagat, as a true Jan does. And the warnings didn't work, so they try to take it to a next level. And within Gurbani we hear of the attempts made by Harnakhash to kill their son Prahlaad Ji. One example was they tried to throw them in the river and hoping they would drown, but that didn't work. Secondly, they tried to throw Bhagat Prehlaad Ji off a mountain, but Qudrati, they landed on something very soft. So Bhagat Prehlaad Ji was protected by Vaheguru themselves because they kept faith within that creator and not this fake lord who's trying to get everyone to puja him. And a time came, as Bhai Sahib mentioned earlier, where we introduced Holika, who was the sister of Harnakhash and the Puaji of Bhagat Prehlaad Ji. And she also had a var, a boon, that meant that she could not be burnt by fire. So Holika realized what was going on, and in an attempt to help her brother, devised a plan with Harnakhash and said, why don't you sit your son Bhagat Prehlaad Ji in my laps and then set me alight. I've got this var, I've got this boon, so that the fire won't touch me, it won't affect me. And then what will happen is Bhagat Prehlaad Ji will be burnt and he'll be killed. And this whole episode will be finished with, and the world will go back to worshipping you. So Harnakhash agreed. And as we heard from Bhai Sahib earlier, that Bhagat Prehlaad Ji sat in the laps of their Puaji and the fire was lit. But the opposite happened to what they were expecting. And Guru Sahib Ji shows us through this Sakhi that the power of a Bhagat, or the power of having faith within Vaheguru, outrules everything. Whether that's a physical ruler, whether that's a spiritual ruler, there's nothing higher than having faith in Vaheguru, and nothing higher than Vaheguru Ji themselves. And Holika actually was the one that ended up getting burnt, and Bhagat Prehlaad Ji sat there smiling, happy as ever. Then Harnakhash himself tried to attack and tried to kill Bhagat Prehlaad Ji, and many of us would have heard of Vaheguru themselves sending down an avatar known as Narsingh. And Narsingh came and he had claws, so he was half human, half animal. And before Bhagat Prehlaad Ji being hurt in any shape or form, Narsingh ripped open the shati, ripped open the chest of Harnakhash and killed him there and then. But the beauty of this Sakhi is that the conditions that Harnakhash had asked Vaheguru for them to be invincible was still kept intact. So Narsingh was half a human and half an animal. So that box was ticked off there. He was killed at a time of twilight, which basically means the sun is just setting and the moon is just rising. So all those conditions were still set. But again, no matter how much jap or tap someone may do, no matter how spiritually powerful someone may be, nothing overcomes the power of Vaheguru, and nothing overcomes the power of a Bhagat of Vaheguru. So that's the story of Holi, and every year within the Indian subcontinent, people of the land throw rang on each other in celebration of the Dusht, Holika and Harnakhash being defeated, and the Rakhiya of that Jan, of that Bhagat Prehlaad Ji. And there's quite a lot of Sikhya we can take from this Sakhi. So first of all, looking at Harnakhash, who initially started off quite well, who initially started off as a good person, if you like to say, as he did a lot of jap tap, he did a lot of meditation, a lot of bhakti. And because of that, he got gifts, he got boons. But he made these gifts, he made these boons his end goal. And he fell in love with them instead of remembering where the gifts had come from. And Guru Arjan Dev Ji describes such a murak, such a fool, that falls into this trap. And on Ang 676 we hear Daat Pyari Visraya Datar. And this perfectly sums up the situation of Harnakhash and what led to his downfall. So Daat Pyari, Daat here is referring to the gifts. Pyari is to do pyar, is to have love for. So just like Harnakhash, he had love for the gifts that he was given in terms of being invincible. Well, he thinking he was invincible. But on the other hand, when we fall in love with these gifts that are given to us, Visraya Datar, Visraya here means to totally forget, to take out of your mind. Datar is the one that gives those gifts. So these things aren't the goal. If you imagine the path to Waheguru, or even this path of Sikhi to be like a road, and going along that road, we need a few things to help us along the way. These gifts that are given to us, whether that's spiritually or physically it could be cars, it could be wealth, it could be a family, or spiritually we get certain powers. These things are for us to take along and carry on continuing along that path, not to stop on the road and indulge in them, because the goal was much further. And that is where Harnakhash, I guess, messed up in that sense. So Guru Maharaj is giving us updesh to say, be wary of these things. They can either take us further away from the path, whereas they're meant to actually take us further up. And on the other hand, we hear of Bhagat Prehlaad Ji, that jana, that sevak, that stayed true to the devotion of Waheguru, and acts as a shining example for all of us here today. So Bhagat Prehlaad Ji is mentioned around 27 times within Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, and the Sakhi that we just discussed, comes up twice daily within the Baniya we read, one in the last shaka of Asa Diwar, and also within the beginning of Rahra Sahib Ji. So we hear Har Jug Jug Bhagat Upaya, Paj Rakhda Aya Ramaraji, Harnakhash Dost Har Marya, Prahlaad Taraya. So Har Jug Jug Bhagat Upaya, Hari referring to Waheguru, Jug Jug here is representing the four jugs, Satyug, Treta Yug, Dwapar Yug, and Kal Yug, the four ages that existence have come in. Har Jug Jug Bhagat Upaya. These Bhagats, these devotees of Waheguru Upaya, Hari himself has created these Bhagats throughout all four ages. Pad Rakata Aya Ramaraji. Ram himself blesses these Bhagats with his protection throughout all four of these ages. So this is just one of many instances where Waheguru themselves have protected their sevaks, the people that have love for Waheguru. Harnakhash the Dusht Har Marya. Harnakhash the Dusht, the enemy, Har Marya, Hari himself, Ananu Mar Datta. He killed that Dusht of Harnakhash himself. Prahlaad Taraya. Bhagat Prehlaad Ji nu Tara Datta. Taraya here basically means to be saved or to be freed. So every day we hear this twice, and hopefully the Sakhi will bring to light now when we read these Panktiyan and act as a beacon to remind us to keep faith within Waheguru Sahib Ji, and that even in the midst of turmoil, even in the midst of the world going against us, in some way, shape or form, Waheguru will come and save us when need be, as they have done throughout every age. And just one more point on Bhagat Prehlaad Ji. He was up against many spiritual powers, many physical powers that Harnakhash had possessed. And within Gurbani, Guru Amar Das Ji talks about these powers in relation to the power of keeping faith within Waheguru. And on Ang 649 we hear, Nav Nidhi Athara Hai Siddhi, Pichhe Lagya Fire, Jo Har Hirday Sada Vasai. So Nav Nidhi, Nav here is referring to 9, Nidhi are the physical treasures that can be obtained within this world, such as Maya, such as values, such as valuable gems, such as money in that sense. Athara Hai Siddhi, Athara here is referring to 18. Siddhi are those spiritual powers, such as reading minds, such as being able to change form, all these sorts of things. Pichhe Lagya Fire, these 9 nids, these 9 treasures, and these 18 spiritual powers, Pichhe Lagya Fire. Pichhe here is referring to behind. Lagya Fire, they continue to follow. Who do these things follow? Jo Har Hirday Sada Vasai. Jo, that person, Har here referring to Hari, Waheguru, Hirday within their minds, Sada Vasai. Sada here is referring to at all times, constantly Vasai. is to imbue and to keep Hari within their minds at all times. So just like Bhagat Prehlaad Ji, Guru Amar Das Ji is telling us, that person that keeps Waheguru within the midst of their minds, within the midst, at the forefront of every action they do, these things the world is chasing for, these 9 treasures and these 18 spiritual powers, they start to follow us. So the game has kind of become upside down in that sense, as people within the world, and even us, including myself today, we will go and chase these treasures and chase these spiritual powers. Whereas Guru Amar Das Ji Maharaj is telling us, just like Bhagat Prehlaad Ji, instead of chasing the powers, let the powers chase you. How does that happen? Go straight to the source. That source is Waheguru themselves. And along that path, everything else will follow you. So moving on, and to the time of Guru Arjan Dev Ji, where Holi kind of introduced with Sikhi for the first time. And at the time of Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj, when they were doing the Chaar Seva, when they were doing the construction of Sri Harmandir Sahib Ji, and in particular the Chaar Seva of that Pavitra Sarovar, where we do Ishnan even till today, that spiritual cleansing bath at Sri Harmandir Sahib. It was a time of Holi, and the Gursikhs came to Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj and said, Maharaj, the whole world, the whole country, the whole desh is celebrating Holi. Do we celebrate Holi? What is Holi for a Gursikh? And at that time, Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj says, Holi ki ni sant sev, rang laga at lal dev. So Holi ki ni sant sev. How do we celebrate Holi? By doing Santa di Seva. By doing Seva, here referring to save, by serving those Sants. And Sant can be taken in many aspects here. Sant quite literally could be an enlightened being, a spiritual being, a Mahapurkha Sant, or even doing Seva of fellow Gursikhs, or even doing Seva of the biggest Sant, Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. Maharaj go on to say, Rang laga at lal dev. And at the time, the whole world was throwing these colors upon each other. And Guru Maharaj told the Gursikhs of the time, what rang should we be looking for? What rang should we be trying to get and put on our body? And Guru Maharaj says, Ranga laga at lal dev. This lal rang, this notion comes up many times within Gurbani. And lal here is referring to that crimson red color, which connotates bhakti, which connotates seva, which connotates prem, pyar for Waheguru. So Guruji says, celebrate Holi by doing seva of Sant, and celebrate Holi by imbuing this lal rang, this love of bhakti, this love of prem, this love of Waheguru within yourselves. And that will be the true way to celebrate Holi. So Guru Arjan Dev Ji has planted the seed for what we'll see culminate into Hola Mahalla that Guru Gobind Singh Ji has blessed us with. So now moving on 100 or so years, at the time of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and we all know the Khalsa Panth was first given Amrit in 1699 on the hills of Anandpur Sahib Ji. And around the time, Anandpur Sahib was kind of the base, was the main hub for Sikhi. A lot of Sangat had come, and it was flourishing just as we've seen in the movies as Chaar Sahibzaade and whatnot. So in 1699, the first ever Vaisakhi was celebrated. The following year, in 1700, our history tells us that there was an instance where the Gursikhs were with Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and a few Gursikhs had gone to the festival of Holi. And what started out as a righteous festival, what started out as a good festival, had taken a different path. And the Gursikhs came to Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj at Anandpur Sahib and said, Maharaj, we've just come from this festival of Holi, and there are bad things happening, there's sin happening, corruption has found its way within these festivals. And they highlighted that Bibiyan had been taken to the sides, Bibiyan had been kidnapped, and wrongdoings done to them. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj says that these festivals have become a place of kukaram, of bad karam, of pap and sin, where initially they started out to be something very righteous, where we remember the triumph, the victory of good over evil, and the rakhya of a Bhagat of Waheguru. And Baba Sumar Singh Ji in the Itihasik Granth Prem Prakash say at this point, Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj himself says, Aurana ki Holi, Mam Holla. So at this point, Guru Gobind Singh Ji said, at this point now, the Khalsa will be Nyara, the Khalsa will be distinct. Aurana ki Holi. For everyone else, they will be celebrating Holi. Mam Sade Vaste, for the point of the Khalsa, we will now have Holla, and we will now celebrate Holla. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji sent out hukamname, sent out orders, sent out edicts to the Khalsa Panth, to the Guru Sikhs of the time, to come tiyar par tiyar, to come forever ready, to bring their Shastra, to bring their Ghor Sawar, and to meet Guru Gobind Singh Ji at Sri Anandpur Sahib. And the first ever Hola Mahalla was celebrated at one of the 5 Qile, one of the 5 forts of Sri Anandpur Sahib, known as Holgar. And it's a beautiful scene. Itihas tells us that Guru Gobind Singh Ji themselves got the Khalsa to practice battles, to reenact battles, and to physically train and be ready for the jungs that were yet to come. So Guru Gobind Singh Ji would split the Khalsa up in half. Half the Khalsa would stay in the fort of Holgar, and the other half would attack, playing kind of attackers and versus defenders. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji would give prizes to those generals that showed excellence on the battlefield. And those generals, those soldiers that needed help, Guru Gobind Singh Ji up, they would come down themselves and say, maybe you should have done this, or next time attack this way. So it was a beautiful scene. And even within the ghazals, the writings of Bhai Nandlal Ji, who was a poet at the time of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, we hear that they explain how Guru Gobind Singh Ji was blessing all the Guru Sikhs at the time, and they say as if the fragrance of one flower was being pushed upon all the other flowers. And within Gurbani every day we hear this essence being spread. We hear Gur Prasad Paramapadapaya Suke Kashta Hariya. So Gur Prasad, with the blessings of Guru, Paramapadapaya, Param here means that most high, that highest pad, which is a padavi, which is a status. So with the blessings of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, with the blessings of the Guru, the Khalsa, or that Sevak, that Gur Sikh, is given the most high status. Suke Kashta Hariya. Suke here is referring to Sukka. Kast is referring to a lakkad, a piece of wood. So that Sukka piece of wood, that dry piece of wood, what happens to it when it gets Gur Prasad, when it gets the glance of our Guru? Hariya. It becomes Hariya, it becomes green, and it starts to blossom. And similarly, Bhai Nandlal Ji explains the scenes of Hola Mahalla and how Guru Gobind Singh Ji was literally looking at Guru Sikhs and blessing them with this sense of Gur Prasad and letting the Khalsa blossom at that time. So these things are still celebrated today. Many of us would have seen the videos, the beautiful videos of Singhs doing a Halla, a battle charge, Singhs riding horses, Singhs shooting guns, Singhs doing archery. But Sad Sangati, let us not think that these things are done in vain and these things are just a show off, as our history tells us. So within 1700, for the first time, Hola Mahalla was celebrated. And at that fort of Holgar, that same practice that Guru Gobind Singh Ji got the Khalsa to do was used a year later, when we hear within our itihas of the Sakhi of Bhagat Singh Ji and that drunken hathi, that drunken elephant. So the Pahadiye, the hill Raje, at the time who had grown conscious, who had grown scared of Guru Gobind Singh Ji and the rise of power of the Khalsa, attacked the fort of Logar, which was another fort of Anandpur Sahib, and they simply could not penetrate it. So the skills that the battle reenactments that Guru Gobind Singh Ji gave the Khalsa the previous year, they were being used and they were being put to success the following year. And out of that, we hear the Pahadiye getting desperate and having to send that drunken elephant in a desperate attempt to break down the walls of Logar. And this Sakhi also relates to what Guru Arjan Dev Ji told us about the rang we're trying to get, the true rang of Holi. And I'll explain how. So many of us would have heard of the Sakhi whereby Duni Chand, a very strong Gursikh, a very built Gursikh, a very proven warrior within the battlefield, was given the chance, was given the seva to take down that drunken elephant. But on the outside, he looked like a Safai. So within Sikhi, we have this slogan, we have this essence of a Sant Safai, a saint soldier. And very importantly, notice how Sant comes first. So, by Dunijand, on the outside, he was a proven Safai, he was a proven soldier. But undero, that Lar Rang that Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj was talking about, that described to us, hadn't been imbued. And the faith within Guru Sahib had not blossomed. And due to this, he fled the fort of Logar and found death another way. And then we come on to a Gursikh who had that love, that Lal Rang, gushing out of them. That Gursikh known as Bhagat Singh Ji. And although he wasn't physically as strong, it didn't matter because he had the Sant aspect ticked off. And because he had the Sant within him, the Sifai was allowed to become Pargat. That soldier aspect was allowed to manifest. And we all hear the Sakhi where Guru Gobind Singh Ji themselves gave a Nagani Barsha, gave a snake-headed spear to Bhagat Singh Ji and allowed him to do the impossible, allowed him to write novels within our history books, the history that will live on forever. So even logically thinking about this, just going back to this notion of a Sant Sifai, the best person to arm, the best person to protect others is someone that's ready for it. And one of the kind of indicators that we're following this path, that we're getting closer to Waheguru, is that we start to take on the gun, the quality of Waheguru. We take qualities, of Waheguru. And let me take one example which links quite nicely with this Sakhi. The gun of being nirpao. So within Gurbani we describe, within Mool Mantar we describe Waheguru Ji as nirpao. And also within Gurbani we hear nirpao japa sagal pao mita. So japa here is to recite or to meditate. By meditating upon that one who is nirpao, referring to Waheguru, sagal pao mita. Sagal here is referring to all of. Pao here is referring to affairs, mita, or mita jande. Within an instant they are destroyed. So by meditating on that one that is nirpao, we also become nirpao. And for the same reason, Bhai Bajitra Singh Ji was nirpao, because he had prem, he had faith within that one that was nirpao, Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj and Akal Purkh themselves. And just going on a bit of a divergence, just while we finish up. Personally, when I came into Sikhi, which is about 3-4 years ago, hearing the itihas such as Bhai Bajitra Singh Ji and even Baba Deep Singh Ji was quite hard for me to connect to. And I know a lot of people go through the same thing nowadays. But the beauty of Gursikhi and the beauty of our rich itihas is that it keeps repeating itself in many different forms. And the same things keep coming up, the same miracles keep coming up. And that history was 300 years ago, but the same history, the same essence we can find 30 years ago. And if we cast our minds back to post 1984, and we take a few minutes to talk about Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji Manojal, whose Shaheed Diyara, whose martyrdom we celebrated a few days ago, and we'll see the same qualities that Bhai Bajitra Singh Ji had being manifest within Guru Sikhs that were 30 years ago, and even Guru Sikhs that are still around today. So Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji Manojal, they were one of the main generals for the in the fight for freedom for the Sikh nation, in the fight for freedom for Khalistan after the 1984 attack. And within the 1986 Sarbat Khalsa, so a Sarbat Khalsa is where the Khalsa comes together and decides on what our plans are for the upcoming years, and also choose 5 Singhs to lead this agitation, to lead this struggle for freedom. Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji is one of those things. And they were also the epitome of a Sant Sifai. So Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji was so dangerous, he was so feared by the Punjab government, the Indian government, that they put a 2.5 million rupee bounty upon the head of Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji. And I know that's a lot of money now, but God knows how much that was in 1986. So why were they so dangerous, and why were they so successful, just like Bhai Bajitra Singh Ji, just like Baba Deep Singh Ji? And the reason was because they had that Lal Rang. The Sant came first and the Sifai followed after. And Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji, because they were being hunted not just by the government, not just by the army forces, but even by armed bande that were after to get this bounty, they had to take up means of guerrilla warfare. So that would mean they wouldn't stay at people's houses, because that would put also the people who were living with them in danger, and they didn't want to affect anyone else upon this path of Dharm Yudh. So Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji would stay within Ketan, would stay within swamplands, would stay within fields. And even in the midst of having no bed to sleep on, even in the midst of probably sitting in Thand and rain, if we look at the Jivan of Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji, we read that they would do 2 to 3 hours Simran every morning before even stepping out into the battlefield. Sant then Sifai. So Sad Sangat Ji, we don't need to go back 300 years. All we need to go back is a few years. And the same stories are coming up. Now the question is, how is our history being repeated? What is it that makes us so powerful? And the same variable, the same thing that keeps coming up is where these things, where these Gurmukhs, where these Gursikhs got their strength from. And that strength is sitting right beside us in the form of Gurbani, in the form of our Guru, that was prevalent at the time of Bhai Bachittar Singh Ji, that was prevalent at the time of Baba Akali Phula Singh Ji, that was prevalent in the time of the Kharku Dalal post 1984, and is still prevalent today. So we all have the chance now, we're all sitting in the Charan of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and just as those Gursikhs tapped into that energy source, tapped into that power source, we also have the same opportunity to do so. But remember the way it goes, Sant first, then Safai, which is a lot harder done than said. And just one short Sakhi from the life of Bhai Bajittar Singh, or the life of Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji, kind of displaying to us the kind of surma they were. If we take our minds back to a pind called Ratol, where there were Panj Singh trapped within a house in this pind, and hundreds of army personnel had surrounded this house from all four corners of directions, and they were told to surrender, and there was no way Babaji was going to surrender because they knew what lied ahead. So they started gunfire, and Itihas tells us that for 72 hours this battle took place. And after 3 days of continuous fighting, the enemy soldiers, the army soldiers, took so many losses they had to retreat. Such is the power of a Gursikh, such is the power of a true Bhagat, such is the power of a Jan, a Sevak of Waheguru. So just as we finish off, what does Holla mean for us today? And does it still have the same effect it did on Guru Gobind Singh Ji's times? Of course it does. So Holla for us today is a reminder to be tiyar par tiyar, both physically and spiritually. So may we start to progress on our journeys with, in trying to attempt to become a Sant and also Safai. And just one Sakhi that some of us may have seen in this film, Chaar Sahibzaade, our Itihas tells us that when Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj had left Anandpur Sahib with their family, towards the back of the convoy on Kore was Baba Ajit Singh Ji, the eldest son of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and also a very famous Gursikh called Bhai Chopa Singh Ji. And as they were leaving Anandpur Sahib, as they were vacating Anandpur Sahib, Baba Ajit Singh Ji kept looking back, continuously looking back. And Bhai Chopa Singh Ji said, Baba Ji, what are you looking at? What do you keep looking back for? And Baba Ajit Singh Ji explained to Bhai Chopa Singh Ji that, Bhai Chopa Singh, I'm just reminiscing of the times we had at Anandpur Sahib. I'm remembering that place where I was born, where the Khalsa was born, where I sat in the laps of Gursikhs, where I learned Shastra Vidya, where I learned Vidya as well, where my brothers were born, and where the Khalsa blossomed, and that place we enjoyed so much. And I'm just thinking, will a time ever come for us to experience that again? Will this be the last glimpse I ever get of that beautiful place? And upon hearing this, the Gursikhs that were around fell in love with the emotion that Baba Ajit Singh Ji was spurring out, and they all started crying. From their eyes, tears started flowing. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji came to know of this and came across Bhai Chopa Singh Ji and said, Bhai Chopa Singh, why are these Gursikhs all crying? And Bhai Chopa Singh Ji explained the situation to Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and Guru Gobind Singh Ji consolidated Baba Ajit Singh Ji and said, Ajit Singh, koi na, don't worry. Every year when the Khalsa comes to Mana Holla Mahalla, to celebrate Holla Mahalla, we ourselves will go and meet them. We ourselves will become Pargat there, and we ourselves will give darshan. And that button still stands today. So the same blessings that Guru Gobind Singh Ji were giving, just as Bhai Nandalal Ji explained, those same blessings can be obtained from Holla Mahalla at Anandpur Sahib every year. So just concluding, we've gone through the Sakhi of Holi, and we've realized Guru Maharaj themselves from this Sakhi allow us to reflect and see that these gifts that we'll get, and I'm sure you've all had your own experiences with these gifts, whether they're spiritual or physical, they are meant to help us along the path of Guru Sikhi and not stop us, not become a burden. So may Maharaj do kirpa that we never fall in love with the Daat, but we fall in love with that Daatar where the gifts come from. And also, secondly, from the life of Bhagat Prehlaad Ji, we realize that the Rakhya, the protection of a Bhagat, the protection of a Sevak of Waheguru Ji, is done themselves by Waheguru. And that power cannot be matched. No matter what Riddhi, no matter what Siddhi that is, these things follow in the footsteps, follow the tur, follow the dust of the feet of those people that go straight to Waheguru. So may we all, even in the midst of living in this world, not try and go for the gifts, but try and connect to the giver. And by doing so, the gifts will up they come. And the Rakya of a Jan, a Bhagat, is also talked about within Gurbani. Guru Maharaj says, Guru Pura Rakya di Haat Pragat Paya Janka Pratap. So Guru Pure, that Pura Guru, that there have been many types of Guru Satsang Ji within this world, but there's only one Pura Guru. That Guru that is 100% truth, that has no essence of delusion, that has no essence of doubt, and that is Satguru Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. So we are blessed to have that Pura Guru, Rakya de Haat. How do they do Rakya? Haat deki. By giving the hand upon the heads of those jans, of those sevaks. And what happens when we take the Rakya? We get the hand of that Pura Guru upon our hands, upon our heads. Pragat Paya Janaka Pratap. What becomes Paragat, what becomes manifest? Pragat Paya Janaka Pratap. That Jana, that Sevaks Pratap, their glory and their amazingness becomes manifest. And 3 examples we went through today was Bhagat Prehlaad Ji, Baba Guru Arjan Singh Ji, and also by Bhagat Singh Ji, all being evidence to this. So may Hola be a reminder, and also the New Year as well. Just quickly on New Year's, the whole world will be starting very different types of New Year's resolutions. But Hola New Year as well is a time for us to start resolutions in furthering our Gur Sikhi, furthering this aspect of a saint and a Safai. So may we make the most of the opportunities we've got now, and the opportunities are countless, whether that's with the Singhs who are doing amazing seva with Nihung Santhia. Learn to read the Gurbani that Guru Sahib has given us. Learn to understand the art of what Guruji is saying to us. And find out about Santhia, read the Itihas. So what I've just gone through with you is a tiny snippet of Itihas, a tiny snippet of history. I'm from an organization called Basics of Sikhi, and you can check out our YouTube channel as well. We also have a Facebook page so you can keep up to date with what's going on. But make the most of this opportunity we've got. And just to finish off, from the Hukamnama we heard from Dasam Granth Sahib Ji. Maharaj started the Hukamnama with Bin Har Naam Nabachana Paha. Bin Har Naam, Naam to Bina. Without the Naam of Hari, without the name of Waheguru, Bin Har Naam Nabachana Paha. Bachan here is referring to being saved. No one can be saved. And the opposite of that has been shown to us through Bhagat Prehlaad Ji. By taking the Naam of Hari, there's all possibility of being saved. And Maharaj themselves offers a guarantee of being saved. So if there's anything we take away from that, maybe the first pankti from the Hukamnama, from Dasam Granth Sahib Ji, Bin Har Naam Nabachana Paha, which also comes up within Shabad Hazare Badshah in this week, within one of the Shabads. So may we work towards imbuing that Larang, imbuing that Naam, both spiritually and physically. So throughout speaking and doing vichar, I would have made countless mistakes. I asked for from Satguru Sahib Ji and also the Sangat to give us your forgiveness, and may Maharaj Kirpa to bless us with more seva. And also just a massive thank you for the Singhs for letting me come and to do this vichar with you guys. It's been an honor to sit amongst so many good Sikhs, which is quite a new experience for me as well. And also may Maharaj keep the sevadars of Nihung Santhia in Chardikala and bless them with more seva. As it's something that's vitally needed within the UK itself. And also support them however you can. They've made an amazing calendar, so purchase it and buy a hoodie as well. So forgive us for all the mistakes. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Please donate and help spread Guruji's message. Link is in the description below. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Guru